The airport hummed with the ceaseless rhythm of bodies and baggage, voices overlapping with boarding calls and the distant roar of taxiing planes. Amid the organized chaos stood Simone Carter, a 35-year-old black woman with warm brown skin, modestly dressed in an old, faded blouse and jeans, her suitcase frayed at the seams. Wheels squeaking betrayed years of use. She clutched it tightly as she waited in the security line, her eyes weary but composed. Then came the interruption. A white male TSA officer, mid-40s, stocky, with a trimmed salt and pepper beard and the unmistakable arrogance of unchecked authority, stepped in front of her. His badge glinted under the fluorescent lights. "You there?" he barked, voice loud enough to turn heads. "Step aside. You're suspected of carrying illegal substances." Simone's brows furrowed. "I beg your pardon?" "Quiet," he snapped. "I need to search your body." Before she could process the words, before she could assert her rights or even ask for a female officer, his hands were on her. What followed was not a search but a violation. Her scream pierced the air as she recoiled, stumbling backward. In the scramble, her shirt was torn, exposing her bra. People gasped. A woman clutched her child's head and turned away. A man pulled out his phone. "Filming." Simone's voice shook, but her outrage overpowered her fear. "You assaulted me. In front of everyone. My husband will see you fired and thrown in jail." The officer smirked, folding his arms with a confidence born of impunity. "Consider yourself lucky. Filthy black woman. You should be honored I even touched you." The crowd stirred, whispers growing bolder. "Look at her," someone said. "Straight out of a dumpster. Probably married to some thug." Another scoffed. Tears of fury welled in Simone's eyes as she shouted, "Why are you all defending this pervert? He assaulted me. And you just stand there?" The officer laughed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You black women dressed like this just to tempt men like me. What's the problem with a little touch?" She said nothing more. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. She wasn't going to argue. She was going to burn the whole lie down. The crowd had no idea who she was calling. Not even the smug officer who now paced lazily, sure of his power, suspected what was coming. Simone's voice cut through the murmur like a blade. "Just wait. My husband is on his way. He owns this airport." The officer scoffed. "And I'm married to Beyoncé." Simone stood her ground, chin high, as the crowd buzzed with skepticism. 10 minutes later, silence rolled in like a storm. A tall black man in an immaculate navy suit strode through the terminal. Every step exuded authority. His name was Dorian Carter, Simone's husband and the executive director of the airport. His eyes scanned the scene, instantly taking in the tension, the torn shirt, the horror on his wife's face. Without a word to the officer, Dorian pulled out his phone and dialed. "Vivian," he said when the deputy director answered. "You told me you had full control of security. One of your officers just groped my wife in front of a crowd. He tore her shirt off. Fire every one of them. Now." Vivian stammered apologies. "I'm on my way, sir." Dorian hung up and turned to the officer, who was now ghost white and frozen. "Apologize to my wife," he said, his voice cold and low, "and get ready to face the lawsuit of your life." The officer stumbled over his words and fled, shame painting his face. But just as the crowd began to understand who they were dealing with, chaos struck again. Vivian arrived, breathless, her heels clicking across the tile. She was a striking white woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and tighter motives. "Sir," she said, "we just found something." She motioned to two other officers who held up Simone's suitcase, unzipped and revealing a packet of white powder sealed in plastic. "Drugs," Vivian announced. The terminal gasped. Simone's jaw dropped. "That's not mine, Dorian. I swear." But Dorian stood frozen. Officers grabbed Simone by the arms. "This is a setup," she screamed. "You know this isn't mine." Vivian raised her voice, loud enough to draw a crowd. "Ever since Director Carter took over, we've seen a disturbing rise in drug smuggling from passengers who look just like this." A chant began from the gathering crowd. Step down. Carter. Step down. The mob grew louder. Black scum. Resign. Simone was dragged out in handcuffs. Dorian stood there, gutted, drowning in a sea of accusations. By nightfall, the story had gone viral. Media outlets ran the footage relentlessly. The headlines were brutal. Airport scandal. Black director's wife caught trafficking drugs. As the media frenzy grew, the damage deepened. Business at the airport plummeted. White-owned networks called for federal investigations. Law enforcement across the city began random searches of black travelers. Entire black-owned stores in the terminal were raided. Lives were torn apart. Outside the Carter home, the protests were nonstop. Some demanded Dorian be jailed. Others, black citizens, accused him and Simone of making things worse for everyone. You let them win. One man shouted. You made it harder for all of us. Trash piled up on the lawn. Rotten eggs. Broken windows. Graffiti. Inside the house. The pressure cracked what was left. Simone faced her husband. This is your fault, she said. Broken. You hired those monsters. You created this disaster. Dorian's rage erupted. And you think I believe you didn't know about the drugs? Are you serious? Everyone thinks you're guilty. What am I supposed to think? They fought. No trust left. No peace. Just two people destroyed by the weight of a lie they didn't even create. Weeks later, Simone stood in court, accused of drug trafficking. Dorian was forced to testify. Vivian sat nearby, calm and collected. All evidence points to the defendant. The prosecutor said, the drugs were in her bag. Her husband's role as airport director only increases the severity of this betrayal. The crowd in the courtroom was volatile, black and white, shouting over each other. The judge slammed his gavel over and over, trying to maintain control. Then the doors flew open. A young white man in a wrinkled suit marched in, clutching a stack of papers. The room fell into stunned silence. Your Honor, he said, addressing the bench. My name is Jacob Hollis. I work under Deputy Director Vivian Sloan. I have evidence proving the defendant's innocence. Vivian stood. Jacob, sit down. You're out of line. But Jacob pressed forward. I have documentation, photographs, and audio recordings that prove Vivian Sloan has orchestrated this entire scandal to remove Director Carter and take over airport operations. The judge motioned for him to proceed. On the screen, photos appeared. Vivian meeting with a known drug trafficker. A video of her slipping money to the corrupt TSA officer. And then the audio. Vivian's voice. Plant the drugs. Make it look like the black passengers are trafficking. If Carter resigns, I get full control. Once I'm in charge, we can push everything through customs. No one questions a white woman. The room exploded. Reporters shouted. Protesters stood frozen. Vivian screamed, lunging at Jacob. But marshals restrained her. She and her co-conspirators were taken away in handcuffs. In the back of the courtroom, Simone collapsed into Dorian's arms, sobbing. He kissed her forehead. I'm so sorry, he whispered. The charges against Simone were dismissed immediately. The news spread faster than the lies ever had. The protests vanished. The media issued retractions. Dorian reinstated trust, naming Jacob as deputy director. He launched a sweeping investigation into every racially biased practice that had taken root under Vivian's rule. Simone returned to the airport not as a scandal, but as a symbol. Travelers came up to thank her. Black passengers once afraid to fly felt a little safer. Business returned. Families boarded planes again with dignity. And Dorian? He stood tall. Not because he was, but because he never gave up clearing his wife's name. The system tried to bury them, but truth flew higher. And this time, it never came down.